Perfecting storms. These are storms that do not come as a result of disobedience, but actually it may be for the other reason, because of our obedience. A good example of this is Job. What was Job doing wrong when all the calamities befell him? Nothing. Zero. In fact, he was doing so well, God was bragging on him in heaven in the presence of the angels and Satan, saying, have you considered my servant Job a perfect and upright man, one that fears God and shuns evil? And then the attacks against Job began. These were designed, or I might say allowed by God, to bring about change in his life, a perfecting storm. When all kinds of trials and temptations crowd into your lives, my brothers, don't treat them as intruders, but as friends, James writes, realizing they come to test your faith and to produce in you a quality of endurance. Let that process go on until that endurance is fully developed, and you will find you have become men of mature character, men of integrity, with no weak spots. Maybe you're in a perfecting storm right now. God's allowed it to make you more like Jesus. And by the way, that is the end game of a perfecting storm. It is to make you more like Christ. We often quote Romans 8:28, but we forget that following Romans 8:28 is Romans 8:29. Well, what does 8:28 say? It says, for we know that all things work together for good to those that love God and are called according to his purpose, right? But here's the problem. Sometimes we misunderstand that. Because the way we may see it is, well, when a bad thing happens, it'll always turn into a good thing because all things work together for good to those that love God. But is that true? No, it isn't. Are there some things that are bad things that God turns into good things? Yes. Are there some things that are bad things that always are bad things throughout your entire life? Yes. So is that verse wrong? No, we just need to read the next verse. Romans 8:29, for whom he foreknew, he also did predestine to be conformed into the image of his own dear Son. So what is God's end game? To make us happy? No, to make us holy. Now, if we're holy, I believe we'll be happy ultimately. But it's not all about happiness and an easy lifestyle. It's about becoming more like Jesus. So sometimes the bad thing that's happening to you now, you're going to see it turn into a good thing, maybe in this life somewhere, and maybe when you get to heaven. I heard a story, I actually read it in one of Chuck Swindoll's books, about a guy who was shipwrecked on an uninhabited island. Well, he painstakingly built a little hut for his protection from the elements where he could keep the few items he managed to salvage from the wreck. And for weeks, this man lived in his little hut, surviving the hot days and the cold nights, praying that he would be found, praying a ship would come, but none came. And one day he was out looking for some food, and he came back, and much to his shock, his little hut had caught on fire and it burned to the ground. He couldn't believe his bad fortune when he went to sleep that night, but he woke up the next morning, and there was a ship at his little island. And the captain of the ship said, we saw your smoke signal, and we came to rescue you. You see? So what can seem like a disaster may end up being a smoke signal to heaven.